It's time to go back. Back to a time long ago, but definitely not forgotten. The 1930s. A time in which the fashion was snazzy and the depression was great. The economy was crashed, but the music was soulful, and World War I had just recently gotten over with. It was a great war. The war to end all wars. A war so big that we wouldn't need another. Well, let's not worry about that for now, because President Franklin D. Roosevelt just announced his New Deal. It's a deal so new that it would make all the past deals seem old. Along with that, we will have many acts throughout this decade, ranging from the Tariff Act to the Securities Act of 1933 to the Maloney Act. The 1930s. This was a time of peace and Hey, I see you over there, Germany. What are you doing? Come on, man. I ain't bothering no one. Come on. I'm just trying to rebuild my economy, man. Come on. You better be. I don't want to come over there. Hey, man, I'm just chilling, man. Come on, man. Anywho, my name is Wally Ray, and I will be your guide through the 1930s. With the crash of the stock market a little earlier in 1929, the US was set to go into a depression. The Great Depression of 1930s. It was a downward spiral. People wouldn't have money to spend, so they wouldn't purchase things, which would mean people wouldn't make a profit of what they were selling, so they wouldn't have money to spend, and so on and so forth. Roosevelt would go on to win the upcoming election and bring a glimmer of hope. He would put into action his New Deal. The thought process behind this was to use the power of the federal government to try to stop the economy's endless spiral. He came up with many ideas, some of which almost didn't fail. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say, they didn't fail, but, it would take the Second World War to put an end to the Depression officially. But for now, the New Deal would help to ease it. Roosevelt would then go on to campaign for a second term that he would win by a landslide after his speech at Madison Square Garden, in which he said, "The forces of organized money are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred." He then went on to say, "I should like to have it said of my first administration that in it the forces of selfishness and of lust for power have met their match. I should like to have it said of my second administration that in it these forces have met their master." And with that, he went on to have a second term. But what's this? A bowl? Well, yes, a dust bowl to be precise. Farmers have farmed the lands dry and the banks were taking their homes. But that's fine. I hear there's work in California, a prosperous state that was green and beautiful. So, with these tales of the Golden State, people from states like Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, and New Mexico made their journeys to California in search for a better life. With this event would bring one of the greatest in historical literatures, The Grapes of Wrath. This book would showcase the many, many struggles of the Dust Bowl. And in the midst of these dusty times, a new Führer was just named over in Germany, a failed artist who served in World War I with a dank mustache. Well, I hope that doesn't end 110% horribly. But let's put a pin in that for now, because in the lit state of Nevada, a dam was just built. It's the Hoover Dam. At an impressive 726 feet, it would add on another reason to visit the Sin City and its many tourist attractions. The greatness of the Hoover Dam would be a showcase of America's industrial abilities. It would also provide many jobs during this Great Depression in order to build it. However, the dam wouldn't be the only massive project of the 1930s. Hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen, because we are heading back down to California. It's a bridge, a gate bridge, a Golden Gate Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge of San Francisco, California. And what better way to transition to the subject of culture of the 30s than one of the best showcases of consumer culture? California. Take a seat, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for some crash course consumer culture. Oofta. Try saying that 5 times fast. First and foremost, one of my favorite parts of this era, the music. This era has some absolutely amazing music from some absolutely amazing artists. Some include Cab Calloway, Benny Goodman, Chick Webb, Duke Ellington, Artie Shaw, Louis Armstrong, Glenn Miller, Ella Fitzgerald, Woody Herman, Fletcher Henderson, Billie Holiday, Count Basie, Jimmy Dorsey, Tommy Dorsey, Bing Crosby, Rudy Valley, Fred Astaire, Perry Como, Russ Colombo, Johnny Merker, Nat King Cole, Frank Sinatra, Eddie Cantor, Louis Jordan, Louis Prima, Mildred Bailey, Annette Hainshaw, and Ethel Schuta. This time period of music was very important as it paved the way for many future musicians and music as a whole, as well as bring a huge spark in the rising popularity of many African American artists. And from there, we jump from music to film. The 1930s was a very important period of movies, as there were many all-time classics that would arise from this period. Some of these classics would include The Wizard of Oz, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, King Kong, Frankenstein, All Quiet on the Western Front, Gone with the Wind, Scarface, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Clyde, and many, many more. And of course, with film comes animation. That's right, cartoons. Now, at this point in time, cartoons were kind of an acid trip of animation, with interesting art styles and disturbing, well be it intriguing, imagery. This decade of animation would be groundbreaking. Major animation leaps would be taken in this time period, and it would set the ground for animation as a whole. One major event was Disney's production of the short film Flowers and Trees. In 1932, this short film was the first cartoon ever made in 3-strip Technicolor. Along with that, one of the first colored feature-length animated films would be made. This would be one of the movies I mentioned earlier, Snow White. Made in 1937, this film would be another one of Disney's impressive achievements. Of course, you can't mention cartoons without talking about the iconic characters that would come out of this era. Some of these characters would include Betty Boop, Goofy, Donald Duck and Pluto, and Popeye, just to name a few. However, it wouldn't just be characters that would come out of this era. Some very well-known series would begin in this decade. First off, one of the most well-known series that would get rebooted time and time again, Looney Tunes. This series would be made up of little stories that would follow the miscellaneous adventures of many amazing characters. There's Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Elmer Fudd, Tweety Sylvester and Granny, Yosemite Sam, Marvin the Martian, Taz, Pepe Le Pew, Speedy Gonzales, and of course, Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. As a great show with an even greater cast of characters, Looney Tunes would go on to bring enjoyment to hundreds and millions. Then we have a very curious one, Tom and Jerry. But not that Tom and Jerry. No, this was the original Tom and Jerry. Before Joseph Barbera would go on to co-create the beloved Cat and Mouse show with William Hanna that would share the same name, he would be an animator and story writer for the show created in 1931 that was dubbed the name Tom and Jerry. The show was produced by Van Buren Studios and ran until 1933. It would later be revived in the 50s by Official Films, and the characters would be renamed to Dick and Larry to avoid confusion. Even though Van Buren's Tom and Jerry wouldn't go on to become extremely popular, it would indeed help provide the gasoline to fuel the fire lit by the Tom and Jerry that we all know and love. So yeah, basically the 1930s was an interesting time, filled with much history and many entertainment advances. And I think I can definitely say that it is my favorite decade for American history. Well, until next time I guess. Peace out, all you awesome people.